Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Gridiron 2022. Dr. Ron Poniewasz, football MD, and Professor Larry Kelly. He is the Shenango varsity baseball coach and a member of the Luxembourg, Arbit, Kelly, and George law firm. He's joining us this week. Larry, welcome aboard. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, my brother. These late starts, though. Now, I'm normally falling asleep around 8:30, 9 o'clock. That's why we're off to a little late start. I dozed off for about 15 minutes. I apologize, but I'm refreshed. I'm fired up and ready to go.
All right. Well, it's never too late for me because I'm up all night. So
I know you are been there and done that.
Yep.
The question is, do you order pizza in at about 2 a.m.?
No, I munch on anything if I want it. Usually I crash around 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. So
we used to order up pizza about 2 o'clock in the morning and leave the box in Bob Vosberg's garbage can. And he'd come in the morning, he wasn't real happy.
Yeah, because you didn't leave him any. That's why.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I used to sit at his desk and do my work.
There you go. All right. Well, this week on Gridiron, we're going to tell you about an athlete of the week that saved the day for his team just in the nick of time. Larry will talk to you about the Red Hurricane and what's going on with that program. And then lastly, we'll talk about a few teams. We'll lump them all into one segment. But first, our athlete of the week, and it is Wilmington High's Ben Miller. Ben Miller is a 5'10", 185-pound junior fullback linebacker. Again, for Wilmington. Last week, he had 23 carries, 119 yards, 1 touchdown. It was a 5-yard run. That was the game-winning touchdown with 13 seconds left in a 14-7 win over Greenville. Larry, that was a much-needed win for Wilmington. I don't know if Brandon Fillion would have called that a quote-unquote must-win game, even though you want to win them all. But at this stage of the year, with Farrell staring you right in the face in a couple weeks, that might be as close as you get to must win.
I get a feeling, and again, I haven't seen the games, but just in reading the scores, that the Greyhounds' ground attack is a little under the weather. They're used to putting up 40, 50 points a game. Their running backs, the lead back might have 100 yards by halftime. And, in the first 2 games of the season, a first game loss last week and a 14-7 win against Greenville this week, I just get the feeling that maybe their ground attack is not in sync. And, that's what drives Wilmington football. I believe they still run that wing T offense, and normally that ground attack behind those offensive linemen is unstoppable. And they put up 200-300 yards a game rushing easily. And they just haven't done it yet this year.
Right. Ben Miller, what a performance for Ben Miller. Just coming through in the clutch, finding that hole, getting up in there with 13 seconds to go. As we know, Wilmington is a program that can kick field goals. They have a couple of kickers, and you're down there that close. But hey, why put it on the shoulders of a kicker when you can put it on the lineman and tell them, open the holes, we got a runner and somebody like Ben Miller who can get up in there and score the touchdown.
I'd be anxious to know if they had a timeout yet. He scored the touchdown with 13 seconds left. Did I hear you say?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Look, as we learned by anybody who was watching the Florida State LSU game, short field goals and extra points are not automatic. Anybody watching that game will know that Florida State blocked an extra point that could have tied the game with no time left. So, Miller had a great game. He ran for about 5 yards a carry. And historically, Wilmington's offensive line is a machine. And so in those situations, yes, if you got a timeout left, you run the ball and maybe even run it again before you attempt, what amounted to just a short extra point.
Sure. Anything to worry about, Larry, with Wilmington? Obviously they lost 23-0 to Sharpsville, came right back as you've been talking about. the ground game. Maybe it's under the weather, as you put it, just not putting up the yardage. Now there's two games on film, even though they got to win. And as you would say, survive in advance. You get the win, do anything you got to do. Doesn't have to be pretty, doesn't have to be a 55-point win. But is there cause for concern?
Well, sure. I just looking at the scores. I haven't seen the game. Just looking at the statistics, the game statistics, they're not running the ball as they have in past years. And again, Ben Miller had a great game, very deserving of Athlete of the Week. 5 yards a carry, over 100 yards, game-winning touchdown in the last 13 seconds of the game. But in years past, Ben Miller would have had 113 yards by halftime. So, it just appears in looking at the game statistically that their offense is not yet in sync.
Sure. All right. This week, Wilmington will travel to Mercer in a District 10 non-region game. Both teams are 1-1. Mercer lost last week. I believe it was to Reynolds, 47-0. So both teams 1-1, looking to get another win. We'll see what happens. This will be a good test for Wilmington, but a good chance for them to get right back in the win column, get 2 wins in a row, and then build some momentum for stepping back into region play the next week.
And Greenville was good competition. Sharpsville obviously was. It doesn't appear that Mercer has the same type of talent that these past 2 teams have. It will be an opportunity for them to get their offense in sync and get their ground game going. So I'll be anxious to see, what their stats look like next week.
There's one thing I learned growing up around here. People should look out for each other, be friends and neighbors that you can count on. So it bothers me when people who are hurt in automobile accidents get bullied by the insurance company. I don't let bullies run over my clients. I do what I was taught growing up. Step up, stand up, and speak up for those who can't. I'm Larry Kelly, and I'm a Newcastle guy.
We're back with you one final time here this week on Gridiron. It's our another topic, and we're going to tell you about a couple of programs around the county, 3 of them, in fact. First off, Mohawk gets back on the field this week after being canceled 2 weeks in a row season. So, they had a Quaker Valley game was canceled, and they had another game was canceled, and plus a scrimmage was canceled also this season for hazing. So, Larry, it's got to be nice for those kids to finally be able to do what the rest of the county's been able to do, and that's suit up and get out there and enjoy some football on a Friday night.
Yeah, and I'm sure everybody is relieved that the investigation is open, or the investigation is over, and that they can now move on. Put it behind them, move on. As we talked last week, what you learned in the investigation, try to put protocols in place so that whatever did happen by way of hazing doesn't happen again. Let's move forward. And I'm sure the team, the coaches, the parents are really happy that they can now do that.
Yeah, so they lost the scrimmage to Shenango. They lost week 0, as everyone calls it. To me, it's week 1, whatever. They lost that one against Union to cancellation, and they lost the game to Quaker Valley to cancellation. All 3 those 2 games were canceled, and then the scrimmage was canceled also. So they have this week at Laurel. It's Laurel's homecoming, and Laurel's got to battle back from a 41-34 double overtime loss at Neshannock, and that has to be a gut-wrenching loss for Laurel, because just think, you make an extra point, and Larry, we're talking about a Laurel win and 2-0 welcoming Mohawk. Instead, they miss an extra point. Mohawk, Neshannock is able to get that double overtime win, and now Laurel's kind of angry going into that game against Mohawk.
It was a great game. 2 really, really good teams. I was sorry to hear of Peyton Weaver's injury. I talked to somebody who was at the game. They said it was really bad, and he's a tough kid. Matt Mangino speaks very highly of him, his toughness, his willingness to do whatever it takes for his team and his teammates to win the game. So it's a big loss for Neshannock. Mohawk, without any game reps, got to go in to Laurel and play them. This Laurel football team's a really good team. Mohawk's going to have their hands full playing in this game. No practices, no scrimmage, no games, no game reps. It's going to be a really, really tall task for them to be effective on Friday night.
Do you worry about the quality of performance, namely a lot of penalties, and even more namely on Mohawk, just because they haven't had those reps, those games, that scrimmage, and really Laurel's three weeks ahead of them in that regard.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, execution, game reps is key to establishing flow, rhythm, execution offensively, execution defensively. By now they'd have had 3 or 4 tapes to look at, make adjustments, correct errors that maybe would have occurred in those games. And now they're going in cold. They're at a real disadvantage.
And what about somebody like a coaching staff like Laurel? Do you start wondering, how are the referees going to call it? Are they going to be kind of sympathetic to the fact that, okay, we can't call every, unless it's egregious, we can't call every false start or every offsides. And if we put our hand up for 5 seconds on the play clock and, it gets to 0 and we count more than 1,001, then we have to throw the flag. You kind of worry that maybe the referees will give them a little bit of leeway more than.
No, you should never use the words sympathetic and officials in the same sentence. You shouldn't do that. It doesn't add up to do that. They're going to call the game the way they always call the game. And, again, playing a game without any game reps, you might expect there to be, a few penalties just because you've had no practice, you've had no game reps, and no time to fix, things that would have otherwise have been fixable at this point in time in the season.
Yeah. Put yourself in Brian Cooper's shoes. They've had a scrimmage and they've had 2 games. They've got plenty of stuff on tape. Now he's trying to, get his team ready. Granted, it's non-league, so it's not going to hurt him if Mohawk, goes in there and upsets them. But they have nothing to watch. I talked to Brian Cooper earlier tonight, and he said, "Well, it is the same coaching staff, so we can look back at, previous stuff and go by that." But to me, that seems like a disadvantage to Laurel in that regard. That they just don't have. They're not on the same playing field in that regard.
Not as big of a disadvantage as it is for Mohawk not having any game reps up in this point of the season. All coaches have tendencies, and we talked about it maybe last week. If you were playing Newcastle, you knew you were going to get pressed. You knew we were going to play man-to-man defense. You knew we were going to run some dribble drive offense. And, if we were open for 3, we were letting it go. All coaches have tendencies. And I don't expect, especially without game reps and practice time, that Mohawk is going to be any different as it relates to the type of offense and defense that they run than they have been in the past. I'd be surprised if they were.
Yeah, that's the one thing Laurel does have going for him is Tim McCutcheon's been the coach at Mohawk for a few years, 5 or 6 years or better. Just imagine if they had a first-year coach, kind of like Union has a first-year coach in Kim Needballa. That would really throw a wrench into it, I would think.
Yeah, and the one thing, I'm guessing that most of the Mohawk players have been in the system for a couple years now, and that they are familiar with the offense and the defensive schemes that Mohawk runs. But again, they're at a disadvantage without having game reps and the ability to fix what oftentimes occurs in first games of the year. You heard Coach Narduzzi after the Pitt, West Virginia game say that the biggest improvement you make in a football season is from game 1 to game 2. Well, Mohawk hasn't had a game 1, so they'll be better next week than they are this week. But it's a tall task for them to go into Laurel and to come out of there with a victory.
Yeah, and you touched on Peyton Weaver. Very, very difficult injury for him, season ending. Only got to play a couple games of his senior season, and he has aspirations to play at the collegiate level. They had that same injury to Landon Schaefer a couple years ago in 2020, and he came back a full go last year in his senior year and played well for the Lancers. And now he's at Mount Union University in Alliance, Ohio, playing on the freshman team for the Purple Raiders. So, just work hard, Peyton, like Landon did, and you'll be on the field next year at the college of your choice, playing college football. He is a hard worker, is Peyton. I met him last year, talked to him a couple times. Once after a game, he was our athlete of the week. So, as you mentioned, he is a good individual, good hard-nosed kid. So, our thoughts and well wishes are with Peyton Weaver. That's a very disappointing way for your season to end.
Yeah, but I don't know him personally, but knowing what I do know about him through Coach Mangino, he'll be back. He's a tough kid. He'll be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Next year at a college football field near us, probably. And well, Larry, anything else that you'd like to say on this week's football?
No, I mean, again, we're into the third week in the season, and I think by week 3, it's pretty clear. I think the teams will know who they are and what they do well and what they certainly need to work on. And I think the fans will have a pretty good idea of, what their team looks like and what kind of success they can expect moving forward. So, week 3, you've made all the adjustments that you need to make. So let's see what happens.
Yep. It is our first week with 8 teams playing, and this is our first week that we get all of them playing on a Friday night. There are no Saturday games this week. So everybody get out to a local stadium or travel with your team down to wherever you need to go. Watch your teams, root them on to victory. And next week, we'll join you right back here on Gridiron to rehash it, talk about an athlete of the week and some topics. He's Larry Kelly. We thank him for joining us. I'm Ron Poniewasz. We will talk to you next week right here on Gridiron.
As a veteran, I fought for our ideals, that we are a nation of laws, that the laws apply to everyone, and that no one is above the law. So if you've been hurt in an auto accident, I don't think you should be pushed around by some insurance company. Not on my watch. I'll work hard to protect your rights. I'm not afraid to go to trial, and I've never run from a fight. I'm Chuck Garbett, and I'm proud to serve the people of Lawrence County.